David stepped out of his sleek black car onto the crowded sidewalk, the midday sun warming the pavement beneath his polished shoes. He adjusted the cufflinks on his crisp white shirt and glanced at the cafe across the street. It was a small corner shop with steam rising from its windows, carrying the rich aroma of fresh coffee and baked bread. Today he planned only to pick up a quick sandwich before returning to his busy schedule of meetings and decisions that shaped fortunes. His tailored suit jacket felt light against his back as he crossed the street, eyes fixed on the cafe's glass door. On the far side of the street, almost hidden by the flow of pedestrians, sat a young woman on the curb. She wore a thin, worn blanket draped around her shoulders like a tattered cloak. Her shoes were scuffed, her jeans frayed at the knees. Resting against the wall beside her was a battered paper cup, its once white surface now dulled by countless uses. Despite her rough appearance, her posture was humble. Almost gentlemanly, she sat with knees drawn close, head bowed slightly as David pushed open the cafe door and inhaled the scent of toasted bread and brewing coffee. He barely noticed her. He stepped forward in line, ready to place his usual order: turkey sandwich, extra lettuce, and a cold iced tea. Then from the corner of his ear came a soft voice. "Excuse me, sir, can I eat with you?" He turned his head and saw her, the woman on the curb who had followed him across the street in her gaze. There was no sign of fear in her eyes, only a quiet hope. Her lips trembled as she waited for his answer. For a moment, David felt the hum of the cafe fade away, placed by the gentle rhythm of her heartbeat. He could have replied with polite refusal, kept walking, and entered his bubble of privilege. He could have ignored her, the way many people do when faced with a stranger in need. Instead, something in her request struck a chord within him. He remembered a time not so long ago when he himself had felt uncertain about the next meal. Before he found his place in the world, he recalled the simple kindness of a stranger who had offered a sandwich and a seat at a table. Now that small act had changed his life's direction. David's lips curved into a gentle smile. He nodded and looked back toward the cafe counter, then turned to the barista. "Could I get 2 of those turkey sandwiches, please, and 2 iced teas?" His voice was calm, almost soft, but carried enough authority that the barista did not question the request. Within moments, David carried 2 neatly wrapped sandwiches, frosty cups of tea back toward the curb. The woman watched him with wide eyes as he crossed the street again, sandwich and tea in hand. Nearby pedestrians paused in their own routines, casting curious glances at the unlikely pair. David settled himself on the curb beside her, careful not to crowd her space. He placed 1 sandwich and 1 iced tea on the ground between them and offered it to her. "Please," he said, "let's eat." She blinked as if the notion of kindness was too vast to comprehend. Her fingers shook slightly as she accepted the sandwich. "Thank you," she whispered, wrapping both hands around the paper. Her eyes glistened, and for a moment she seemed uncertain whether she had heard correctly. David sat quietly beside her, unwrapping his own sandwich. He took a small bite, savoring the crisp lettuce and turkey, then glanced at her. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Mia," she said after a breath. "I'm Mia. Nice to meet you, Mia. I'm David." He nodded, offering a friendly look. For a while they ate in silence. Around them, the sound of city life continued. Cars honking, people chatting, a bus rumbling down the street. But in that small circle, a calm settled. Finally, Mia spoke. "I haven't eaten like this in days." Her voice was soft, but steady. "I lost my job after I fell on the ice. My leg was hurt, and the hospital bills." She paused, swallowing the rest of her words behind a sigh. David listened, his gaze steady. The busy cafe onlookers watched the pair, intrigued by the millionaire who sat so naturally beside a homeless stranger. Some whispered, "Who is he? Why is he helping her?" Others pulled out their phones, capturing the moment. Mia took another bite, then looked up. I try not to beg, but sometimes she touched her paper cup, now half empty. I have no choice. Her cheeks reddened with embarrassment, but she continued. "I grew up here, near this street. I used to work 2 jobs, one at the bakery down the block, the other at a small bookstore. Loved both. Then the fall happened. David nodded. That sounds hard. He paused, choosing his next words. I understand what it's like to feel stuck. Before my parents started their company, I once lived in a tiny apartment. There were times when I couldn't afford dinner. Someone helped me back then. That kindness changed everything. Mia's eyes widened. You really understand, yes? He said simply. Sometimes life takes you by surprise. He paused to sip his tea. I don't know what happened to me or how I got so lucky. All I know is that we all need help sometimes. The moment felt timeless. The sun warmed their shoulders. A gentle breeze carried bits of conversation from passers-by, a child's laughter, the distant bark of a dog, a busker strumming chords on an old guitar. It all faded into the background as the two strangers shared this meal together. After a few more bites, Mia placed her sandwich wrapper on top of her empty cup. She looked at David, tears glinting at the corners of her eyes. Thank you, she whispered again. I don't know how to say it. Just say you'll pay it forward when you can, David replied softly. Her tears spilled over then, silent and trembling as she tried to blink them back. She swallowed hard, breathing. In the sound of kindness she had almost forgotten. David rose slowly, brushing crumbs from his lap. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a fresh $20 bill. Mia eyed the bill with surprise, her hand hovering. He placed it gently on her knee. Don't think of it as charity, he said. Think of it as an extra sandwich. Mia's mouth opened in shock. She shook her head, unsure. I can't take this. He smiled warmly and leaned a little closer. You already took my sandwich. That's enough. Now let's share a bit of hope as well. She looked at him, searching his face for any sign of jest. Finding none, she wrapped her hand around the bill. She tucked it slowly into her blanket as if it were a precious treasure. David stood. One more thing. He reached into his pocket and took out a small card embossed with his name and the name of a nearby cafe. He handed it to her. I own that cafe. I'd like you to come by tomorrow morning. No interview. Just start at 8. Out. If you want the job, you'll have it. Mia stared at the card, trembling fingers tracing the letters. The passers, be watching. The scene murmured softly. Some eyes glistened with emotion. A few wiped tears from their cheeks. The air felt heavy with hope, as if everyone who watched could feel the weight of this moment. Why would you do this? Mia asked, voice barely above a whisper. David patted her shoulder kindly. Because someone did it for me once. Looked up at him, tears slipping down her cheeks now in earnest. I don't know how to thank you. Accepting, he said, smiling. And by helping someone else one day. Mia nodded, unable to speak. He gave her one last gentle smile. Then walked back across the street, toward the cafe, leaving her with sandwich wrappers, $20 bill, and a business card. As David disappeared into the cafe's bright interior, Mia sat still for a long moment, holding the card in her hand as if it were the sun itself. She looked around at the sidewalk, at the people watching, at the steam rising from the cafe, door where he had gone. The world seemed to glow with possibility. Then, carefully folding the card, she tucked it into her blanket next to the bill. A small smile spread across her face. Fragile, but real. In that busy city street at lunchtime, two lives had intersected in the simplest of ways. A shared sandwich, a seat on a curb, a moment of understanding. In that moment, both millionaire and homeless girl found something they needed. One rediscovered the power of kindness. The other reclaimed her hope. And as Mia rose slowly, clutching her treasures, the crowd that had gathered began to disperse, carrying with them a quiet lesson. That a small act of compassion can shine a light in the darkest corners of the city. Mia woke before dawn, her breath forming little clouds in the cool morning air. She lay on the thin cot at the shelter, eyes wide, heart racing. In her hand, she felt the business card David had given her. The letters still seemed to glow in the dim lamplight. She sat up slowly, careful not to wake the others, and folded the card again. Then she smoothed the blanket around her shoulders and slipped out into the hallway. She found a small bathroom, washed her face with cold water, and looked into the mirror She half expected to see the same tired eyes that stared back at her every morning. But today, her eyes held something new, a spark of hope. She pinched her cheeks, took a deep breath, and whispered to herself, "You can do this." Back in her room, she rummaged through her bag for the few items she owned: a faded blue blouse, a pair of clean but worn black pants, and the blanket David had wrapped around her the day before. She put on the blouse and pants, surprised that they still fit. She brushed her hair carefully, tying it back in a simple braid. Then she wrapped the blanket around her shoulders like a shawl and picked up the $20 bill in her pocket. She folded it into her wallet, determined to save it for something special. The morning star shone faintly in the sky as Mia stepped outside. The streets were quiet except for the distant hum of buses and the soft murmur of night workers heading home. She held the business card tightly in her hand, 2 beats of her heart matching the sound of her footsteps as she walked toward the cafe. Each step felt heavy with nerves and light with possibility. When she arrived, the cafe sign glowed warmly. David's Corner Caf. Steam curled from the windows, carrying the scent of fresh pastries and coffee. A few early customers lingered inside, sipping their drinks and chatting softly. Mia paused at the door, her hand trembling on the handle. She felt the weight of everyone's eyes. Or maybe it was only her own worries reflecting back at her. She gave herself a small nod and stepped inside. The chatter hushed for a moment, then returned as the barista, a tall woman with curly hair, smiled at her. "Good morning," the woman said kindly. "Must be Mia." Mia's throat tightened. "Yes," she said softly, holding out the business card. The barista took it and nodded. "David told me you'd be here. I'll be in soon to show you around. Why don't you grab an apron and we'll get started?" Mia felt her cheeks heat up. She followed the barista to a small corner where aprons hung on hooks. She picked a clean one, slipping it over her head. The fabric felt strange against her blouse, yet comforting, like she belonged here. She tied it around her waist, smoothing the fabric down until it felt just right. A few moments later, David arrived. He walked in with his usual calm confidence, dressed in a simple shirt and jeans today instead of his suit. He caught sight of Mia and crossed the room in long strides, greeting early customers on the way. When he reached her, he offered a warm smile. "Mia, good morning," he said. His voice was gentle but filled with purpose. "Are you ready to begin?" Mia swallowed hard and nodded. "Yes, sir." "Please call me David," he said with a grin, "and feel free to call me by name, not sir. We're a team here." He motioned for her to follow. "First, I'd like to show you how we prepare our pastries." They moved to a counter where croissants and muffins rested under glass domes. David pointed to trays lined up on a steel table. "These go into the oven at exactly 375 degrees for 17 minutes. You'll learn to feel when they're just right. But first, let me show you how to load the trays." Mia watched closely as David demonstrated. He placed each pastry carefully, spacing them evenly. Then he slid the tray into the oven, closing the door with a gentle push. He turned to her. "Now you try." Her hands trembled as she picked up her first tray. But David stood beside her, guiding her fingers until she felt confident. She slid her tray in, took a step back, and exhaled. The oven light glowed, and she realized she was smiling. Next, David showed her the espresso machine. He explained how to grind the beans, tamp the coffee, and steam the milk. Mia rolled up her sleeves and dove in. Steam hissed as she held the milk pitcher under the wand, and the milk swirled into a creamy foam. She poured the shot into a cup, added the milk, and presented her first latte. David tasted it and nodded approvingly. "Nice work," he said. "You're a natural." Mia's heart swelled with pride. She felt a warmth spreading from her chest into her limbs. For the first time in months, she believed she could belong somewhere. David then introduced her to the day's pastries, bagels, and breakfast sandwiches. He showed her how to slice the bagels, layer the ingredients, and wrap each sandwich neatly. Mia worked alongside him, her movements growing more confident with each task. The cafe began to fill with customers, workers from nearby offices, students with backpacks, an elderly man reading a newspaper. Each time the bell on the door rang, Mia glanced up, eager to help. Her first customer was a young mother with a stroller. She ordered a hot chocolate and a blueberry muffin. Mia rang up the sale, handed over the cup and muffin, and smiled. Mother returned the smile gratefully and took her child's hand. Mia felt a thrill. She had just made her first sale. Hours passed in a blur of orders and laughter. Mia learned to juggle task-staking orders at the counter, steaming milk, restocking pastries. David checked in now and then, offering tips and encouragement. He introduced her to the other staff members: Luis, who handled deliveries; Sarah, who managed the register; and Elaine, the pastry chef. Each greeted Mia with kindness, offering her small smiles and helpful advice. At noon, David took a brief break and invited Mia to sit with him at a small table in the corner. He handed her a sandwich and a cup of tea, her second sandwich of the day. "You've done wonderfully," he said. "How do you feel?" Mia took a bite, thinking about how she felt. Tired, yes, but also alive. "I feel happy," she answered. "Oh, I didn't know I could learn so much in just a few hours." He nodded. "You have a good heart and a strong spirit. Let those matter. More than experience." He paused, looking around the cafe. "I want more than just to give you a job. I want you to grow here. I'll pay for you to take classes in business or hospitality, whatever you choose." Mia blinked, feeling tears prick at her eyes. I don't know what to say." He smiled gently. "Just keep showing up. Keep working hard. Everything else will follow." The afternoon flew by. Mia greeted regulars by name, remembered their orders, and even cracked a joke or two. She laughed freely, the sounds something she had almost forgotten. When closing time came, she helped sweep the floor, restock the shelves, and wash the dishes. Her muscles ached, but it was a good ache, like proof of a day well spent. As David locked the front door, he placed his hand on her shoulder. "You did great today, Mia. Really great." She looked up at him, a soft smile on her lips. "It's you, David, for everything." He nodded. "Tomorrow at 8, same time? And if you ever need help walking hours, counseling, anything, you'll let me know." Mia's heart filled with gratitude. She nodded and watched as he drove away. Cafe's lights dimming to a soft glow. She gathered her things, slipped off the apron, and hung it on its hook. Then she stepped outside into the evening air, breathing deeply. She walked back to the shelter, with her head held high. The night sky was clear, stars twinkling overhead. For the first time in a long time, Mia believed in a future. She clutched the business card in her apron, feeling their weight like promises in her hands. That night, as she lay on her cot, Mia thought about the day's events, the hum of the espresso machine, the laughter of customers, the kindness in David's eyes. She whispered a quiet thank you to herself and drifted into sleep, dreaming of pastries, coffee, and a life filled with hope. And so part 2 ended. A simple day that changed everything. A job that meant more than money, it meant a chance to rebuild, to learn, and to belong. In the heart of the cafe, 2 strangers had begun a journey together, one filled with possibility and promise. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for tonight, Mia slept with a heart full of light. ChatGPT said Mia arrived at the cafe early the next morning, the sky still pale with dawn. She carried the apron David had given her and the business card tucked safely in her pocket. As she pushed open the door, the bell chimed, and the warm light inside welcomed her. The scent of freshly baked bread and rich coffee filled the air, wrapping around her like a hug. She hung her coat on the rack by the door and tied on her apron. The barista, whose name she now knew was Sarah, smiled at her. "Good morning, Mia. You're right on time." Mia nodded, her heart fluttering. "Good morning, Sarah." Sarah handed her a small notebook. "Here are the orders for today," she said. "The usual regulars, plus a few new faces. Take a look and let me know if you have any questions." Mia opened the notebook. The first page had a list of names with orders: espresso for Mr. Lee, cinnamon roll for Ms. Thompson, and so on. Few names she did not recognize, but she felt ready. This was her place now. David arrived moments later, greeting Mia with a warm smile. "Ready for day 3?" he asked. She took a deep breath. Yes, I am. He nodded. Great. Today I'd like you to learn something new, managing the register and handling our online orders. It's an important part of the business. Mia's eyes widened. The register? I've never done that before. That's okay. David said kindly. I'll show you. Let's start with the basics. He guided her behind the counter to the cash register and the computer screen beside it. He explained how to ring up a sale, apply discounts, and handle cash and cards. He showed her how to check for online orders and print the tickets. Mia listened closely, practiced each step, and soon she was ringing a few mock orders on her own. She felt a sense of pride as the register beeped smoothly under her fingers. By mid-morning, the cafe grew busy. A small line formed, and Mia took her place at the register. The first customer was a young man with a laptop. He ordered a cappuccino and a banana muffin. Mia greeted him with a smile, rang up the sale, and handed him a ticket. She told the barista to prepare the drink and muffin. The customer thanked her, and she watched him take a seat by the window. As the line moved, Mia's confidence grew. She greeted each person by name whenever she could, remembering their faces and orders. When a regular asked for their usual, she already knew what to press on the register. Each beep felt like a small victory. Soon, a new challenge appeared. A woman at the counter asked for a large order of sandwiches for an office meeting, and she needed them in 20 minutes. Mia's heart raced. She glanced at David, who nodded and mouthed, "You've got this." Taking a deep breath, Mia entered the order into the system, confirmed the pickup time, and printed the tickets. Then she coordinated with Sarah and the pastry chef Elaine to prepare the sandwiches. They moved like a well-oiled machine, slicing bread, layering ingredients, wrapping each sandwich carefully. Mia timed everything, checking the clock on the wall. 18 minutes later, the sandwiches were ready. Mia placed them on a tray, double-checked the order, and called the customer. The woman arrived, impressed at how quickly and smoothly the process went. "Thank you so much," she said, paying at the register. "You run a great cafe?" Mia felt a rush of joy. "Thank you," she said, handing over the tray. "Have a wonderful meeting." After the rush ended, David found Mia wiping down the counter. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did that flawlessly," he said. "I'm very proud of you." Mia beamed. "I couldn't have done it without your help." He shook his head. "You did the work. I just guided you." Today you learned how to handle a big order and manage the register. Tomorrow, we'll cover inventory and ordering supplies. Soon, you'll know every part of this business. As the afternoon sun shone through the windows, Mia took a quick break. She sat in the corner, sipping her tea and watching customers laugh and chat. She felt a deep sense of belonging. For the first time since her accident, she felt useful and valued. That evening, after closing, David invited Mia to stay a few minutes longer. He lifted a cardboard box filled with new coffee bean samples from a local roaster. "I want you to try these and tell me which one you think our customers will like best," he said, handing her small bags to smell. Mia inhaled each aroma, fruity, nutty, chocolatey. She described what she smelled and tasted. David listened, impressed by her sensitivity. "You have a good palate," he said. "I think you could even help us craft a special blend." Mia's eyes lit up. "I'd love that." They packed away the samples together, talking about plans for the cafe, new menu ideas, and community events. Mia shared her own dreams. Maybe one day she would manage her own cafe or help others find jobs like she had. David encouraged her, promising to support her education and growth. Walking home that night, Mia felt a pleasant tiredness in her muscles and a warmth in her heart. She thought about how far she had come in just 3 days, from sleeping on a shelter cot to running a cafe station, handling customers with ease, and even contributing ideas to the menu. The world felt full of possibilities. That night she wrote in her small notebook, "Day 3. I learned new skills. I helped dozens of people. I feel strong." She placed the notebook and the business card side by side on the small shelf by her cot, then drifted to sleep with a smile. Meanwhile, word of Mia's transformation spread quietly through the neighborhood. Few customers mentioned her kindness and competence to friends. A local news blogger popped in to see the miracle at David's Corner Cafe, planning to write a short piece about the homeless woman turned talented barista. Slowly, Mia's story began to touch more hearts in the city. And so, part 3 closed. Mia embracing new challenges, discovering hidden talents, and earning respect and friendship. Each day brought growth, each task built confidence, and each kind word added to her strength. The girl who once begged for a sandwich now helped run a thriving cafe, one step closer to rebuilding her life and inspiring others along the way. ChatGPT said, Mia arrived at the cafe before the morning rush, but today, something felt different. As she tied on her apron, she noticed a small stack of envelopes by the register. One had a bright sticker that read, "Thank you."
Curious.
She opened the top envelope and found a handwritten note. It said, "Dear Mia, your story touched my heart. Please use this gift to help you get back on your feet. With gratitude, a friend." Inside was a check for $200. Mia's fingers trembled as she held it. She looked around the cafe, half expecting someone to laugh at her wonder. But David stood nearby, offering an encouraging smile. When the cafe opened, regular customers greeted Mia with warm hellos. She smiled back, clutching the envelope close to her apron. Later, a young man at the counter asked for a latte. As Mia prepared it, she glanced at her phone and saw a notification. An article had been posted online about her journey from street to cafe. The headline read, "Millionaire's Kindness Empowers Homeless Woman to Thrive." The article showed a photo of David and Mia sharing that first sandwich. It was written by a local blogger who had watched them that day and felt inspired. Mia's heart raced as she rang up the sale. She told the barista about the post. Sarah leaned over and read a few lines, then gasped. "Mia, people are commenting like crazy. They want to donate to the shelter where you live." Mia blinked. She had not asked anyone to help. He'd only come for a job all that morning. Customers mentioned the story. One brought a small bouquet of wildflowers and left it on the counter with a note saying, "You deserve beauty in your life." Another left a gift card for groceries. A delivery driver handed Mia an envelope marked for shelter, saying he had seen the article and wanted to help. By midday, Mia felt a mix of joy and unease. She worried she might be taking more than she could manage. She found David and showed him her phone. He read the article and nodded. "This is wonderful, Mia. The world can be kind when it sees someone's strength. But we should help manage these gifts so they do the most good." He asked Mia to gather the donations at the end of the day. Then he called in the cafe's social media coordinator, a young woman named Priya. Together, they took photos of the envelopes and gifts always, preserving the privacy of donors, and wrote a post explaining that the cafe would collect donations for the city shelter. They promised to deliver all proceeds the next morning. That afternoon, Mia found herself busier than ever. Orders rolled in steadily, and she served customers with the same warmth she always did. But now people nodded at her with extra kindness, as if they saw more than just the barista behind the counter. When closing time came, Mia and David gathered the stack of envelopes, gift cards, and checks. Priya printed out a summary of all donations so they could record each gift. The total came to over $1,500. Oh. Mia's eyes widened. She had only expected a small gift for herself, but now there was enough to buy blankets, warm coats, and meals for dozens of people at the shelter. The next morning, before opening, Mia and David loaded boxes into a small van rented by the cafe. Mia carried blankets and coats. David lifted boxes of canned soup and rice. They drove to the shelter where Mia had stayed. When they arrived, the shelter's director, a kind woman named Rosa, greeted them with tears in her eyes. She hugged Mia and thanked them both. Inside, volunteers helped unload the van. Rosa called out names of items and how many would go into each care package. Mia watched as coats were folded neatly, blankets rolled up, and food placed into sturdy bags. She felt a sense of pride swelling in her chest. These were the people she had shared a table with, the people who had slept on the same cot. Thanks to everyone's kindness, they would have warmth and comfort. After the delivery, Mia and David sat in a small office across the hall. Rosa offered them tea and cookies. She told them stories of shelter residents. An elderly man who had once been a teacher, a young father struggling to find work, a woman who cared for her sick mother. Each had a name and history, just like Mia did. "Mia," Rosa said softly, "you have given these people more than blankets. You've given them hope. You showed them that someone sees them." Mia felt tears prick her eyes. She looked at David, who nodded gently. On the drive back to the cafe, David asked Mia how she felt. She said, "I feel full, like my heart is too big for my chest." He smiled and reached over to squeeze her hand. "That's good. Let that feeling guide you." Back at the cafe the next week felt like a whirlwind. The local paper ran a story and more donations arrived, this time for job training and housing programs. A nearby bookstore offered to host a fundraising event. A bakery down the street donated pastries. Every Friday to the shelter. Even the local radio station invited Mia to share her story live. When the day of the radio show arrived, Mia sat nervously in a small booth behind a microphone. She introduced herself and told her story simply, how one sandwich had changed everything. She spoke of David's kindness and the generosity of strangers. She thanked everyone who had donated and encouraged listeners to look for chances to help someone else. Listeners called in with messages of support. One man said he would start volunteering at the shelter. A student offered to help with online awareness. An older woman said she planned to drop off homemade scarves. Mia felt tears in her voice as she spoke, overcome by how a single act of compassion had rippled outward. When she left the radio station, she felt lighter than she had in months. The city seemed different, now full of people willing to listen, willing to help. In the weeks that followed, the cafe hosted a community luncheon. David invited shelter residents, cafe customers, local business owners, and volunteers to share a meal. Mia helped set out tables in the cafe's back garden, stringing lights overhead. Long wooden tables held trays of sandwiches, bowls of soup, and platters of fresh fruit. Soft music played in the background. At the start of the luncheon, David stood before the crowd. He spoke quietly but clearly about the power of kindness and the importance of seeing one another's humanity. Then he called Mia forward. She felt the eyes of dozens of people on her. She took a deep breath and told them how scared and hungry she had been. She spoke of the man who had sat beside her and offered a sandwich and a job, and of all the strangers who had donated to help others. When she finished, the crowd rose and applauded not for her, but for what they had all achieved together. Some had tears in their eyes. Mia looked around at smiling faces of people she had served coffee to, people she had helped bring supplies to. She saw Rosa from the shelter, beaming with pride. She saw the bakery owner winking at her. After the applause, people mingled. Mia brought bowls of soup to a group of former shelter residents. She laughed with them, sharing memories of how they had all helped each other survive. She felt a sense of community she had never known before. As the luncheon wound down, David found Mia and handed her a small box. Inside was a delicate silver pin shaped like a small heart. Engraved on the back were the words, "Hope Giver." Mia's eyes filled with tears. She pinned it to her apron. "You've earned this," he said softly. "You gave hope to many, starting with yourself." Mia nodded, her voice catching. "Thank you for showing me how." He took her hand. "You showed us all how." Later that evening, Mia returned to the shelter. She shared soup with her old roommates and told them about the luncheon. They cheered for her and touched her pin. She passed around small slices of leftover cake from the cafe as a treat. For once, they had more than they needed in Chile. Down that night, Mia thought about how far she had come. A sandwich on a curb had become a job, a community, and a movement of kindness. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Good night," feeling the warmth of the pin on her chest and the memory of every smiling face she had helped. In the heart of the city, a ripple of compassion had grown into a wave that lifted many. And as Mia slept, dream after dream of bright mornings and shared meals filled her rest, promising that the journey of kindness would continue. The morning sun streamed through Mia's apartment window as she woke with a gentle flutter in her chest. Today was the day she would take the next step. She slipped from her cot and dressed quickly, folding up her blanket and placing it carefully. In a bag, on the shelf beside her, the heart-shaped Hope Giver pin gleamed softly in the early light. She smiled as she pinned it to her blouse, feeling its warmth settle over her like a promise. At David's Corner Cafe, the day began with its usual hum of activity. Mia stepped through the door, greeted by the hiss of the espresso machine and the clatter of cups. She tied on her apron, adjusting the pin so it was visible to everyone. Sarah waved from behind the counter, and Luis wheeled in a delivery of fresh bread. Mia inhaled deeply, savoring the familiar scents as she prepared for a new challenge. Leading a small training session for 2 new hires, David approached her with a clipboard. "Good morning, Mia. Ready to teach?" he asked, smiling. Mia nodded, her heart beating fast. She led the 2 young women, both nervous and wide by the counter. She showed them how to steam milk, reminding them to listen for the soft hiss and watch for creamy swirl. She explained the steps for ringing, orders, how to greet customers with a warm smile, and how to clear a table quickly when it was ready. The trainees watched her every move, and Mia felt a surge of pride. She had once been in their place, uncertain of every task. Now, she was guiding others. Mid-morning, a regular customer approached the counter. Mr. Patel, an elderly man who always ordered black coffee and a croissant. He tipped his hat to Mia. "Miss Mia, may I thank you again for yesterday's soup? My granddaughter said it was the best she had ever tasted." Mia beamed. "I'm glad she liked it, Mr. Patel. Would you like anything else today?" He smiled and nodded. She prepared his order with extra care, wrapping the croissant in a bright napkin. He left a generous tip, which Mia placed in the hat by the register. This hat was now used for donations to the shelter. As the lunch crowd arrived, Mia managed a busy shift with grace and confidence. She called out orders, handed cups across the counter, and offered quick kindness to each customer. When she had a moment, she glanced at the donation hat. Coins and bills formed a little mountain inside. She felt grateful for everyone's trust and generosity. After the rush, David found her at the back table, sipping water. "You're doing great, Mia. Really great," he said. He slid 2 envelopes across the table. One was an acceptance letter from the local community college. The other was a scholarship notice covering her tuition for a hospitality course. Mia's eyes filled with tears as she read. She folded the letters carefully and tucked them into her apron pocket. "I applied for the program last week," she said softly, "but I didn't expect this." David nodded, his eyes bright. "You deserve it. You've worked so hard. Now you can learn even more." That evening, Mia closed the cafe with the team. She counted the donation hat. $400 more had come in. She and Sarah filled out the record sheet, preparing for another delivery to the shelter. David praised her for her leadership and dedication. "You've become a cornerstone here," he told her as they locked up. Mia felt a gentle warmth in her chest. She'd come so far. That night, she walked home under a sky studded with stars. Her mind buzzed with plans, classes at the college, new menu ideas, fundraising events, and ways to support people in need. In her small notebook, she wrote, "Day 5, I taught others. I got into college. I am not alone." She fell asleep dreaming of the day ahead. A week later, Mia stood before a small classroom at the community college. She wore simple clothes and the silver pin on her lapel. Around her sat 12 students ready to learn the art of coffee and hospitality. She began by telling her story, how one act of kindness had changed her life, how she found purpose behind a cafe counter, and how she hoped to give back. The students listened raptly. One raised a hand and asked, "How can we help others the way you were helped?" Mia smiled. "Start small, share a meal, offer a smile. When you grow, you can do more." The room filled with nods and smiles. Mia felt a deep sense of belonging among those who, like her, wanted to make a difference. Back at the cafe that afternoon, customers greeted her with warmth. A young couple brought her homemade cookies, saying they had heard about her classes and wanted to support her studies. An artist left a painting of the cafe's corner garden. Mia placed it on the wall next to the cafe's community board. Her photos of events and thank you notes blossomed like flowers. That evening, David invited Mia to a small dinner at his home. She stepped into his warm, book-lined living room, feeling both excited and nervous. He served simple dishes: fresh salad, roasted vegetables, and warm bread. As they ate, he asked about her classes, her dreams, and her family. Mia spoke of her childhood love of baking with her grandmother, of holidays spent cooking, and of her hope to one day open a community kitchen. David listened and encouraged her vision. "You have the heart and the skills, Mia. I believe in you." When Mia returned home, she found a note slipped under her door. "Thank you for inspiring me to chase my dreams." Signed, a friend. She picked it up, unfolding the paper. Inside was a quote, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." She folded it carefully and placed it in her notebook next to her own words. The weeks turned into months. Mia balanced college classes with long shifts at the cafe. She learned about food safety, business planning, and advanced barista techniques. At the cafe, she took on more responsibility, ordering supplies, designing seasonal menus, and mentoring new trainees. Each day brought new challenges and new joys. One crisp morning in late autumn, Mia stood in the corner garden outside the cafe. String lights hung overhead and rows of lettuces and herbs grew in raised beds. Today was the grand opening of Mia's community kitchen, a small annex behind the cafe where people in need could come for free meals and cooking classes. The kitchen smelled of simmering soup, fresh bread, and roasting vegetables. Neighbors, customers, and shelter. Residents gathered, serving spoons and folding chairs in ready anticipation. David stepped forward to speak. He told the crowd how one sandwich had led to this, a place where everyone was welcome, where skills could be learned, and where kindness fed both body and soul. Then he invited Mia to cut the ribbon. She gripped the scissors, her heart pounding. The ribbon fell away, and applause filled the air. Ashe. Mia looked around at smiling faces. Friends who once had nothing, locals who brought ingredients, students eager to learn, and volunteers ready to lend a hand. She felt a wave of love and pride. The doors opened and people streamed in. Some carried empty jars to fill with soup. Others brought loaves of bread donated by local bakeries. Mia moved among them, welcoming each with a hug or a handshake. She showed them the cooking stations and pointed out where they could sign up for classes. She laughed with a young father teaching his daughter to stir the pot. She showed an elderly woman how to sprinkle herbs over roasted vegetables. Every gesture felt natural, every smile genuine. As the sun dipped low, the event wound down. Tables were cleared, dishes washed, and leftovers packed for the shelter. Volunteers shared stories of the day's joys. Mia stood beside David, watching a small group share bread and soup under the garden lights. She leaned toward him. "This is more than I ever dreamed," she whispered. He smiled and squeezed her hand. "You dreamed it? You made it real." That night, Mia returned to her apartment and sat on her cot, pinning a small photograph to her wall. The ribbon-cutting ceremony, her standing with scissors in hand, surrounded by smiling faces. She wrote one final entry in her notebook. "I found a home. I feed hope. I am family." She closed the notebook and hugged the silver pin to her chest. Feeling its weight, at once a symbol of kindness received, now a badge of kindness given. In the days that followed, Mia's story continued to inspire. Local schools brought students for field trips. The community kitchen offered job training and healthy meals. David's Corner Caf and Mia's community kitchen became a beacon of hope in the neighborhood, a place where no one ate alone and everyone had a seat at the table. And as Mia walked through the cafe, greeting each person by name, she remembered the day she asked a stranger, "Can I eat with you?" and how that simple question became the spark for a movement of compassion. In her heart, she carried the memory of every sandwich, every teaching moment, and every tear of gratitude. She had come full circle, from homeless girl to community leader, all because someone chose to share a meal and, in doing so, shared hope.